Is it possible to lose 100 pounds and still feel fat? Is it possible to go from being someone who's slightly overweight to a champion bodybuilder and still feel like you're fat? Is it possible to be 6 feet tall, 125 pounds, and become a champion natural bodybuilder and still feel like you're skinny? The answer to all of these is a resounding yes. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about something that we don't talk about very much, which is how a negative self-image is very often the catalyst, the driving force that pushes us to do things like lose weight, to do things like transform our body, build muscle. But that unless somewhere along the line we learn to develop a positive self-image and learn to allow ourselves to be driven not by forces of discontent with how we look, but of self-acceptance, that we ultimately can end up sabotaging any progress that we make. In this video, I'm going to talk about how people can really sabotage their progress if they don't learn to see themselves and see their progress. I'm also going to talk about what you can do to help yourself see your progress and share a little bit about my journey as well, because I'm that skinny kid who was 125 pounds and was competing as a bodybuilder decades later and still feeling like a skinny kid. And I'm also the one who's trained people who've lost over 100 pounds and seen them lose all of their gains because they were unable to see themselves as they really were. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Thanks for tuning in. Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Kevin Richardson, personal trainer, natural bodybuilder, nutritionist, and I'm really happy that you took the time to tune in. I'm also really happy by the amount of positive response that we've had so far to these videos. I will be continuing to put out as much content as I can on a regular basis. So if you haven't already, do be sure to like and subscribe so you'll always be first in line when something new comes up. But also feel free in the comment section to tell me if there's any particular topic that you would like me to cover, because I'm always happy to hear from you. So today we're talking about self-image, and self-image is a very personal topic because it's one that affects and affected not just my clients, but affected me personally. And I think that as we go along in this video, we will talk about the biological basis for why it is that we suffer so much by not being able to see our progress. Why that is. Why is it so hard for us to see our progress? And we'll talk also about how important it is to see our progress, because if we don't, we tend to make bad decisions that over time can undo all that we've done. And I'm going to start with a very sad example, and I will term it and phrase it as my first great personal training accomplishments and my first great personal training failure. And that particular case is the case of a former client of mine, one of my first clients in my second year as a personal trainer, who we will call Mr. A, who lost 103 pounds training with me. Now, a little background about my particular training style. It's high intensity training 3 times a week, and the workouts last anywhere between 10-15 minutes. That's it. no cardio. Everything with regard to weight loss is a combination of those 3 high intensity workouts and dietary instruction that's given directly to me, to my clients. Now, today, I've had the privilege, the honor, and the blessing of having worked with dozens of people who've lost over 50 pounds. And I would probably say somewhere about 6 or 7 who've lost 100 pounds over the past 30 years. But the first one was a complete surprise to me. I had no idea that my training style was going to be something that could help somebody lose that much weight. I was a teenager. I was maybe 18 years old when I first started training Mr. A. And I did see that there was some potential for weight loss with my training style because I had my first client who had lost some weight with it. But he was one of those perfect clients, people who do everything you tell them to do. I gave him a dietary guide. He followed it to the T. We had 3 sessions a week. He showed up for every single session. As he kept on going, he kept on losing more and more weight. And the more weight he lost, the happier he seemed to become. Now, Mr. A was a very eloquent and loquacious man, middle-aged, always talking, and really the type of person who fills a room with his presence. And as he lost more and more weight, he became so much more animated, so much more vocal. He would literally end up being one of my greatest ambassadors because he would stop everyone that he could before his workouts, to tell them how much progress he had made, to talk about how fantastic the whole training program was, and how happy he was with his accomplishment. Really and truly a joy to see someone transform in front of my eyes. And over the course of about 13, 14 months, he had lost 103 pounds. And every once in a while, he would even bring in his old pants to show just how big he was. It was remarkable. I mean, truly remarkable. And I had never, as a young trainer, seen any type of weight loss like that firsthand. It was the first time I had ever seen anybody undergo such a remarkable transformation. And I was so happy. I really was so happy for myself, as far as being able to have helped him. And also for Mr. A, I really felt so proud of him, what he had accomplished and what he had done. But then something curious happened. The normally gregarious Mr. A became quiet. He'd come to the gym and he wouldn't say as much as he would before. He stopped talking about his accomplishments, and I would ask him what was wrong and he would say everything was fine. Until one day he very abruptly said that he felt like he hadn't lost any weight whatsoever and that it had all been for nothing. Now, I've had the honor as well of spending a good 17 years of my life, my adult life, working in social services, during which period of time I was really privileged as well to have learned so much in terms of clinical psychology and working with individuals in terms of mental health issues and also issues like body image. But at the time, I'm an 18, maybe 19-year-old teenager. I have no idea why it is and how it could be that Mr. A, who had lost over 100 pounds, couldn't see that he had lost any weight at all. He really felt like he hadn't achieved anything. And it was puzzling. It was disconcerting. It was disturbing to me. It literally kept me up at night because I would really feel not just a matter of confused, but I was worried about him. I was really worried about Mr. A. And sure enough, he started missing workouts, which wasn't like him. Then he started eating off his diet. And it was at that point that I came here to the United States. And I never saw Mr. A, again. But I kept in touch with people who were good friends of his. And they said that he, within the course of a couple of months after my departure, put all the weight back on. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I pride myself not on being a weight loss specialist. I pride myself on being the person that helps people lose weight and keep the weight off by teaching them life lessons that will allow them to sustainably keep their weight off. And here I was, having had this client who had lost so much weight and put it all back on, probably even a little bit more than he initially had. And I felt like I failed him. And I did fail him. And I realized that I needed to incorporate a lot more in terms of self-awareness and self-image when working with my clients, not just focus on the physical. With Mr. A, I was spot on with all the physical parts, his diet, making the tweaks in his diet as he went along, his training, making sure the intensity was just enough to, help him both build muscle and lose body fat at the same time. But we never spoke about the psychological implications of what it is to transform. And after Mr. A, I really began to look into it, not just for my other clients, but also for myself. So with my clients, I could clearly see that if you weren't able to see the progress that you made, you're much more likely to become frustrated for all that work you did and then undo everything that you did. And the understanding of why it is that self-image was so difficult to see when there's a change in our bodies became really personal, because Mr. A helped me reflect a little bit more on my own dissonance between who I was, how I looked, and how I felt. You see, at the time when I was probably about, let's say, 20 years old, I had already been competing in my native Trinidad and Tobago as a bodybuilder. I was able to hold my own on stage with bodybuilders. I started bodybuilding at 125 pounds, 6 feet tall. And I competed at 198 pounds right before I left Trinidad. So that's a pretty big difference, 125 pounds to 198 pounds. And yet, if I was honest with myself, I would have to say that I didn't really see a change in my body. I felt very, very much, and I know this sounds crazy because it in some ways is a little bit. I almost saw the body that I had as this kind of abstract, transient thing that wasn't really me. That what was really me was a skinny kid, and that what I saw in the mirror really didn't reflect what I really look like. Now, I would go on to compete here in the United States very successfully as natural bodybuilder again, competing at, you know, really high natural bodybuilding levels. And years went on. I got even into my 30s. I made a natural bodybuilding DVD, and I was still struggling with not seeing myself as a skinny kid. But I was working all during that time to be able to see myself as I was, because I understood how dangerous it was for me to be where I was. It wasn't healthy for me just to keep on thinking, well, I'm a skinny kid. I'll never have big muscular arms. I'll never have a really built physique. That handicap that I felt I started off with, being skinny, being not really a big person, was one of the driving forces to make me become a bodybuilder. But as I went on, I could clearly see from the examples of other bodybuilders around me who I worked with that this negativity, even though it's really almost ubiquitous in the bodybuilding world, this sense that we're not good enough, that we need to get better, that we're the skinny person or we're this overweight person, that we need to transform ourselves. And no matter how much we transform, it's never good enough because we can't really see it. Others can. We can collect trophies. We can be on magazines covers, we can be in videos. We can be all over Instagram. We can be very, very popular. We can have thousands of people comment on how fantastic we look. But it tends to be hard for a lot of us in this field to see ourselves that way. And what I saw, especially in the natural bodybuilding world, was that a lot of natural bodybuilders who were competing at the highest level had that same discord between what they look like and how they saw themselves. And what I saw as well was the ones who were really unable to see themselves the way they were the ones who were the most tortured, yes, but also the ones who ended up eventually using anabolic steroids, abandoning the path of natural bodybuilding completely because they needed to be more. They felt that they weren't good enough. And they felt that all that they had accomplished didn't amount to anything. And again, these are some of the top natural bodybuilders of all time, some of them. And they had remarkable physiques. They looked fantastic. But they weren't happy, number one. And they never really enjoyed their physicality because they didn't see themselves that way. And I was self-aware enough, and I thank Mr. A's experience for really focusing me on trying to not fall into that trap and trying to learn how not to be part of that movement of people in the fitness industry who look fantastic on the outside but don't feel fantastic on the inside. And so over time tend to sabotage themselves, tend to do really unhealthy things, either to undo what they've accomplished or to do extreme things like use drugs because they don't feel like they're good enough. I didn't want to have to deal with any of that. I didn't want to go down that path. I also wanted to be at peace. And I also, very importantly, wanted to be somebody who was not hypocritical, telling my clients how important it was to have a positive self-image when I didn't really have one myself. I had to put the work in, from the way I saw it, to do my utmost to come to some sense of equilibrium with who I was on the outside and who I was on the inside. And my personal training work really helped me as well understand how important it was that we talk about that particular topic. Because what would tend to happen with most of my clients, and I don't say some, I say most, at some point, they're working really, really hard. They're doing really, really, really well. And they have a bad day. For some, it's a bad day. Some, it's a bad week. Some, it's bad days that they keep on happening. They keep on having from time to time. And during those bad days, they feel like they didn't do much of anything. They look in the mirror and they feel like, you know, they may have lost 50 pounds. They don't see it. They may have transformed their bodies and, you know, really have a perfect, sleek, tight, toned physique just the way they wanted it. But that day they didn't feel that way. They may have been getting ready for a bodybuilding bikini figure or fitness competition. And they just have that feeling, even though they're in really great shape, that they were totally out of shape. Not a little out of shape, but totally out of shape. And I became really good at helping people walk their way through that feeling and make them understand that it's a feeling. It's how you feel about that image in the mirror that you're seeing. And whenever I would work with someone going through that period of I'm not good enough, I don't feel like I did anything, I feel like a failure, I feel like a fraud, I feel like an imposter, I feel like I didn't put any work in at all, I feel like I made no progress whatsoever. Whenever I worked with someone who was having those feelings, they became priorities because I knew what happens if it's not addressed. If you keep on thinking that all that work you put in, all those years sometimes of work you put in, didn't really amount to anything, if you dwell on it, you would self-sabotage. You will undo it. You will say, well, I ate healthy for all these months and I don't really feel like I did much of anything. I'm going to eat unhealthy. Forget it. Screw it. I'm going to go off my diet. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to show up to my appointments. It's what tends to happen. It's a very common thing that happens, and it's important to have someone, when you're standing on that ledge, thinking that all that you've done hasn't amounted to anything, that someone is there to kind of nudge you along. Now, it's not something spoken about much in the fitness industry at all. It's almost a taboo subject. In fact, you might be surprised just how many of your favorite fitness personalities who probably in their private moments struggle with their self-image. And I know this for a fact because I know a lot of them. And I've had a lot of the same conversations with some of the top fitness names on the planet, as I have with some of my clients who lost 10 pounds and felt like they didn't achieve anything. The same conversation. have the same conversation with someone who's lost 20 pounds, 30 pounds, and feel like it didn't do anything, as I do with someone who is arguably among some of the top, or considered to be among some of the top bodies on the planet. So that leads to a very important point, which is, if you ever feel that all that you did is for nothing, and what you see in the mirror doesn't reflect all the work you did, and you feel like it's all worthless, it's important to understand that that's very much normal. There's nothing wrong with you. And that a lot of people, in fact, more people than you would imagine, feel exactly the same way. It's extremely common. And here's my working hypothesis as to why that is. Now, diet-wise, everything that I talk about and put forward in terms of nutrition is usually based on evolutionary biology. And I feel that evolutionary biology also has a place in the psychology of how we as humans see ourselves and how we deal with something as novel as body transformation. So on a dietary point of view, if you eat something that's, let's say, a modern processed food, I'll throw one out for example. Let's say you're eating something horrible like, let's say, some heavily processed sugary cereals. Now, eating some of those cold sugar cereals is akin to putting something into your body that over the past 2.2 million years of our time on the planet never existed in the human diet. And so because of that discord, again, between how humans and our human ancestors have been eating, shaped by our environment that shaped our bodies, if we eat outside of those particular parameters and introduce new and novel foods into our diet, very often those novel foods can have some pretty negative side effects because our bodies aren't adapted to work with them. Our bodies are designed to consume carbohydrates that are naturally high in bulk, high in fiber, tend to be also of a particular quantity that you don't get that much of it at one point in time. So by eating a box of sugary cereal, your body's getting more calories than it normally would at one point. That's number one. It's getting simple sugars in quantities and a speed of sugar delivery to your blood that's not something that would ever happen under natural circumstances. And all that sugar coming in is coming in with the absence of fiber. Now, because of that discrepancy between what our bodies are built to take in, which is carbohydrates that are high in fiber, low in sugars, high in bulk, compared to a processed food, which is low in fiber, high in calories, high in sugar. And again, the zero fiber is a problem as well, which also makes it easier to eat a lot of it. There are consequences. There are consequences in terms of how our insulin levels rise unnaturally as a result of eating such a food. There are consequences in terms of how it can, over time, really create an environment for fat deposits. Really high insulin levels, your body has no idea why it is that you have so many calories, so much sugars coming in at one point in time. So your body says, all right, we don't know what to do with all this coming in, store it. How do we store it? Fat. And we can see a clear connection between certain foods, especially processed foods, which tend to create not just fat storage, but fat storage is in places where normally humans don't tend to store fat. It's called visceral abdominal fat. That's the fat that's stored around your organs that creates that stomach that is so much a ubiquitous part of modern living for most people past a certain age. And it's not natural. It's a result of us doing something that's not natural. It's eating not natural foods because our bodies aren't adapted to it. Now, how does that have to do with self-image? It's the same thing. If we consider the fact that Homo sapiens have been the product of those millions of years of evolution, and evolution is simply the progression of a species shaped by the environment to survive in that environment in order to get to the point where the species can reproduce successfully. So because of that, there are a lot of things that are innately human that don't necessarily line up with what we'd probably call objective reality. See, objective reality is how the universe actually is, and none of us can see objective reality. We see reality through the lens of a body, a creature, a species that's designed to survive in a very concrete world. We don't see quarks. We don't see atoms. We don't see the effects of quantum physics in our everyday lives. All of those things are millions of miles away from our consciousness. We can understand it intellectually. Some of us can. But it's not something that we think about in regular life. In regular life, what we see is what there is, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And that's all shaped by evolution. Evolution is very much a process for creating beings that are really good at survival, but it's not a process designed to create beings that are perfect. We're not perfect. And when I say perfect, it means there are things about us that are lacking in terms of even weight loss. For all those millions of years, obesity was never part of our makeup. Body transformation was not really something that happened. The transformation would happen around puberty, where you went from being a child to an adult, male or female. And that's it. There'd be some hormonal changes that would change your body radically. But the person that you were in puberty was the person that you would see yourself becoming, and your late adolescent self would be the image that you would develop as yourself for the rest of your life. And if you look at cultures that are very much traditional, hunter-gatherer cultures, for example, the older men and the older women don't look that much different. There's the gray hair and the wrinkles, yes, but physically there's not that much of a change in terms of body composition the way there is here in developed countries. No one gets fat and no one loses a lot of fat. It doesn't happen naturally because under natural circumstances, the foods that we eat do not create situations where we can end up being overweight. It just doesn't happen. And so we're not, from an evolutionary point of view, designed to detect and deal with those changes in our bodies. There's nothing that you can think of from an evolutionary point of view that would be beneficial for us as humans to have developed over millions of years to say, well, I used to weigh this much, now I weigh this much, and so I'm going to see myself differently as I change. It never happened because arguably one could say that before the 20th century, the very idea of body transformation was probably a really, really rare occurrence, given how much food people had access to, given the type of food people had access to. In most parts of the world, it just simply didn't happen. This is a very new phenomenon. It's novel. Body transformation is new. And just like the new novel foods that our body is going to go crazy with, it's the same with our ways of thinking. We can't process it. We can't figure out why is there this discrepancy between how I see myself and what I know somewhere in the back of my mind I look like. It's the same thing. We're not designed to see it. And just knowing that as well, just that cognitive awareness of the fact that we are not designed to see the changes in our body in itself sparks something. Because unlike other animals, we can do more than simply be shaped by our evolutionary environment. We can develop our own ideas. We can develop our own ways of thinking because we are essentially learning machines. We can learn to see ourselves when there's a body composition change. But it's something we have to actively work at. We have to think about it. We have to reflect about it. We can't be on autopilot. Autopilot is usually going to be whatever body and physique you had during your adolescence to late adolescence is the body and physique you'll always think you have for the rest of your life. That's default. If you're going to change your body, be it weight loss, weight gain, be it putting on muscle, be it losing pounds of body fat, you have to do some true work with your self-awareness. If you lose 5 pounds, no matter how much you write it down, I wrote down every single pound I put on. I wrote down the measurements of my biceps as I went along. I wrote down the circumference of my thighs, my calves, my neck. I had all these numbers written down that could clearly show that I was no longer 125 pounds and I was no longer the skinny kid with 12-inch arms. It was there intellectually, but emotionally it wasn't. One of the things that helped me was the understanding that there is this cognitive dissonance that goes on because of the fact that who we are and how we see ourselves is really formed during our adolescence. And it's really hard not to see yourself that way. Very, very hard. But if you don't start seeing yourself as you are, you risk undoing all that you've done. And even more importantly, you risk not enjoying, benefiting, and being at peace with the accomplishment that you've achieved. If you've worked to achieve excellence, and excellence is not meaning the best body on the planet, that's not excellence. Excellence is you work to be a better you. That work is important. That work is sacred. That progress is sacred. You have to start thinking of yourself that way. When you have a bad day, you have to be able to understand that having a bad day is not the time to look in the mirror and make a judgment call as to whether or not your dad is successful or not. It's not the time to figure out whether it's the time to change your workout. It's not the time to figure out whether you need to be doing more or less. It's not the time. It's the time to step back. The same way we say when you're really hungry, don't go shopping because you're going to pick up the wrong foods. Common sense. Same with body image. If you're having a bad day and don't really feel that good about yourself, that's not the time to make any decisions as to what you're going to do next when it comes to your fitness. Very, very important. Because again, when we look in the mirror, what we see isn't objective reality. Evolution doesn't need us to see objective reality. Doesn't need us to see the photons coming back and forth. Doesn't need us to understand that we're a collection of cells that are turning over. Doesn't need us to understand visually that we are looking at anything but a collection of our memories, our experiences, and this interface that we've gotten used to using to perceive ourselves. Looking in the mirror is seeing how you feel about yourself more than anything else. And that's important. What you see is how you feel. Eat some junk food when you're in the best shape possible. Go in front of the mirror. You're not going to feel that you look that great. Because at the back of your head, you did something, so you feel, oh, it must affect the way I look. That's not what's really happening. It's important to see that. It's really important to be able to reset and just keep on going, keep on going. Things get better. If you keep on going, things always get better. If you stay long enough, stay the course, keep exercising, keep eating properly. You're going to have a good day. When you have a good day and you feel like you can really see, hey, I made these gains, hey, I made this progress, that's the time of your decisions. Not the times when you're in a bad place. Because there's also something very insidious about being human. And that's the fact that our bodies, like everything else in nature, does everything to resist change. Our bodies don't want to change. Our bodies want to stay the same. And so it works with our mind, because our bodies and our minds are the same thing, more or less, to try to make us revert to whatever it believes is our default state. I don't have any here. When I dream, in my dreams, I have hair. Kind of strange, but not really, because for most of my life, I'm 47 years old. I shaved my head somewhere in my early 40s. For 40 something years, I had hair. So when I close my eyes and I see a dream state version of myself, Kevin has hair. Am I going to work on trying to see myself in a dream state with no hair? Probably not. But for a very long time, when I closed my eyes and had a dream of myself, I didn't always see the muscles. I did work to make sure that when I close my eyes and see myself, I see myself as I am today, not as how I was. And what propels me today to keep on reaching for excellence and training hard and trying to be better isn't the desire to overcome some insecurity, isn't the desire to overcome some perceived handicap, isn't the desire to not be that skinny kid anymore. It's the desire to be the best me I can be today and a little better tomorrow, because I enjoy the process. It's very much process oriented. So that's important. We have to get out of our heads, because being in our heads can be dangerous. It can make us think that, screw it, everything I've done is not worth it. It is. It's also worth it for you not to be tortured and feel that the person who you were when you were younger is the person who you are now. That's not going to change unless you do something about it. There's an old saying in Latin, "Caelum non aninum mutant, qui transpare querent," which translates as, those who cross the seas change their skies, not their spirits. Same thing happens when you transform your body, regardless of whether the transformation of weight loss or muscle gain. Doesn't matter. You're the same person, unless you do something to change the way you see yourself. So, work on that positivity. I really and truly hope that me sharing this in this video helps you realize that if you've had that particular feeling, that you're not alone. It's important that we talk about these things. And for a lot of us, we don't want to talk about them because it takes away that, veneer and facade of the person who's always in control, always positive, that's just so prevalent in the fitness industry. And honestly, it's a little bit sad because nothing is black and white. There's a lot of grays. There are a lot of different colors that we have to see. I really and truly hope this video helps you in your personal journey. And I really and truly hope that you like and subscribe to the channel. And stay tuned because we will be putting in more content on a regular basis. I really and truly appreciate your tuning in, and I hope to see you soon. So keep that self-image positive and Excelsior.